Hey folks, it's Nate. Thanks for joining me at the art table again today. I recently made the mistake of making a comment in a YouTube comment section. Just don't do that, folks. It's not worth the aggravation. However, when it was all said and done, I came away with an interesting topic. The comment was on intellectual property, and among the other fascinating things I read in that comment section, I saw somebody say, and in fact I had someone reply to me, that you cannot own an idea. Now, my post was specifically about the ownership of stories that I write. I am, after all, someone who wishes to be a professional author, and that means I'm going to make most of my money by selling things that I write. The way I control my ability to sell things I write is through intellectual property laws, specifically laws relating to copyright. Now, as I always say when I make these videos, I am not a lawyer. However, since I do wish to be a writer, I have studied some intellectual property law. In fact, when I was in school, one of the most useful parts of my education was a few days spent going over IP law in one of my writing courses. Now, that doesn't make me an expert. In fact, I would say that I learned just enough to realize how very little I know about the subject. It's very complicated, it's very in-depth, and the exact outcomes on it are highly dependent on the circumstances of any given case. So you can't make a lot of blanket statements about IP law. But one thing that I did understand very clearly by the end of those few days is that it is true. You cannot own an idea. You can own a story. Let me explain what I mean. My understanding of copyright law is that it is a derivative of patent law. Patent law is a branch of property laws that revolve around inventions. The whole point of patent law is to make it feasible for people to share their inventions without worry for their creativity being stolen from them. For example, if you build a better mousetrap and then file for a patent on it, anyone else who duplicates your mousetrap you can then sue. This lets you benefit by licensing out the right to create better mousetraps for a certain fee, which means you can profit from your invention far beyond your own ability to put it into practice. If you don't have a factory to build better mousetraps, you are still incentivized to tell other people about your good mousetraps because they may then want to license the right to make them from you. It's a very similar idea with stories. If you tell a great story about a character, but you don't have enough time or enough creativity to tell more stories with that character, you can license that character to someone else who can then tell stories with it. It also makes it much easier for you to profit from your story because anyone who distributes or copies your story without your permission is open to a lawsuit. What's important to note here is when you build a better mousetrap, you do not own the idea of mousetraps. You only have a right to mousetraps that look and function like the mousetrap you spent all of your time and effort and ingenuity creating. Anyone else can also invent good mousetraps, and if their ideas are different enough from yours, or if they take your idea and they make something even better based on it, then they can also get a patent for their mousetraps. The idea of a mousetrap is not property. The work, the time, the effort put into innovating mousetraps makes one specific kind of mousetrap your property. Namely, the kind of mousetrap that you invented. The same thing is true of a story. You cannot own the idea for a story. You cannot own the idea of robots. You cannot own the idea of space travel. You cannot own the idea of civilizations on Mars. But if you put in the time and the effort and the energy to build a story about one of those ideas, if you create a set of rules governing the behavior of robots, if you create a specific society with religions and cultural practices and traditions on Mars, then you can own those stories. Anyone with a knowledge beyond the layman of how stories are made knows that ideas for stories are cheap. They are very, very easy to come by. Anyone can have an idea for a story. Most people will have several over the course of their lives, and they'll be pretty good ideas. But they won't have a story. That's all they have, an idea. They haven't put the time in, they haven't put the effort in, they haven't put the ingenuity in, they haven't put the creativity in to make an actual story. And so, they cannot own that story. It is not the general idea that makes a story. It is the particulars. The particulars must be brought by the storyteller. Who is the protagonist? What are they like? How many viewpoints are the stories told from? Does the story have an antagonist? Will we get any part of the story from their point of view? Is it told in the present tense or the past tense? Is it told in the first, second, or third person? Will it rely heavily on tropes? What kind of dialogue will be used? Answering these and many other questions are vitally important parts of the storyteller's role in telling a story. It is this work, and not the idea that the work is founded on, that copyright law protects. So why is it important for writers to understand this? The first and most obvious reason is so that you are well positioned to defend your own work. There is an attitude, especially among creative people, to treat the fruits of their labor as something that everyone has a right to. Look, I get it. We are intelligent, we are well-spoken, we are funny, we are interesting. Everybody should want to hear what we have to say, right? Well, maybe. Maybe not. However, if you really are worth all of that attention, people are going to be willing to pay you for your work rather than demanding it from you for free. Look, I know there are plenty of artists out there who are egomaniacs who expect to have the world handed to them on a silver platter for the weakest, most unimpressive artistic creations they can muster. But if that attitude puts you off, keep in mind that it does you no good to go to the opposite extreme. You deserve to get paid for the work you do, fairly. And if people don't want to pay you for your work, that's fine. But if they want to experience your work, they should be willing to pay for it. And there's nothing wrong with your insisting on that. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't maybe give away a little bit of your work for free as a promotional thing. That's something entirely different. The point is, you are the one who gets to make decisions about your work and how people can experience it and what that will cost them. You have to make those cost-benefit analyses, and you should not be shamed if you choose to put a price tag on that. Second, and just as importantly, do not short sell the importance of craftsmanship. It is not the ideas that make your stories valuable, important, or worthwhile. It is the time, the effort, and the creativity you put into turning those ideas into a finished product. Do not skimp on that effort. Don't trust your ideas to carry your stories through, and even if you have a fairly mundane idea that you really like, don't be afraid to work on it, because it is that work, it is that passion, it is that interest that people are going to see and become invested in. It is ultimately what takes your idea and makes it a story. It is what takes an undeveloped piece of the broad public consciousness and makes it something uniquely yours. One of the greatest plagues on entertainment right now is how bland, how generic, how corporate, how uninteresting modern entertainment is. There's no passion, there is no personal touch, there is no craftsmanship, there is no effort. There is only a slop of bland ideas that are in fashion right now in almost all the entertainment we are getting. Real talk. You can't have a story that is too much yours to make sense to anyone else. That is not the problem that we have right now. Don't be afraid to take a story and completely own it. Don't let some ignoramus who doesn't understand the difference between an idea and a story tell you that your story doesn't belong to you. It is yours. You must craft it with all the passion and skill that you have in order to make something worth sharing with others. If you can't do that, you don't have a story. If you have done that, that story is yours, and you should be damn proud of that. Anyway, That's all I've got for you today. There's a like button and a subscribe button down below. You can use those as you see fit, and I will talk to you